I get a lot of my therapy sessions from acting because, there's sometimes I want to kill somebody. I feel like I want to be very angry. And, you can't. In life, you don't get the chance to sort of lash out at people. Or you want to cry all day, or you want to have a tantrum. What's really wonderful about being an actor is sometimes you get to do that, do all those things as a character. Mm-hmm. And that's why it's delicious, because we don't get to play all the parts of ourselves in real life. And an actor does.
Filmmaker Magazine presents Back to One with Peter Rinaldi.
Marsha Stephanie Blake is an actor. She sat down with me on the Upper West Side of Manhattan to talk about the work. Do you have a typical procedure that you go through in preparation for a role?
Well, it definitely obviously depends on the role. If I'm playing a fictional character, that's one thing. Obviously, if I'm playing someone who has existed, who's lived or is still living, I just research anything I can find on that person, anything they've said, what they look like, how they dress. If I can get moving footage of them, that's amazing, because then you see how they walk, how they gesture, what kind of cadence they have in terms of vocal quality, or how they their pauses. We all have our specific things that we do when we speak, and that's useful. And actually, that's a lot more pressure usually, because then you feel like you should not imitate, but be true to the essence of that person, which is not the same as a direct, imitation or trying to. I don't consider myself a mimic, but what I would try to do is watch sort of like the small things about a person, if they blink a lot or don't, like very, subtle things that maybe only I would notice, but someone who knows that person well would be able to watch it and say, oh my God, you got her down to the little tiny details of how she, moves her fingers when she talks or what have you. If it's someone who is fiction, it's made up character, it starts with whatever the problem is of that character, right? So what's an example? So when I was doing, probably the most recent example is Rosemary from Loose. And Rosemary was described to me as someone who had some kind of psychosis, but it wasn't a specific thing, but she clearly had hallucinations, delusions, then periods of clarity and calm, followed by periods of frantic anger. I spoke with a couple of doctors, psychiatrists, psychologists, and I did research on, that one was very difficult because they wouldn't give her a specific diagnosis, because I think they didn't want to seem like they were making a statement about something so specific. So it was a little bit vague. So I had to narrow her down to just, okay, so I can't think of her as someone who has an illness because she's not conscious most of the time. And this was after speaking with a doctor about asking how conscious are people who are going through something like this, who have some kind of emotional, mental disorder. How conscious are they that they have it? And I was told, probably not very, because when it's happening, you don't know it's happening. And so I thought, okay, so now I have to see it more as just personality traits as opposed to an illness. Like, what are her personality traits, which is how you would approach any character, right? how does this person deal with adversity? How does this person deal with joy? How does she deal with having to get food, or how does she eat? How does she speak? So like the simpler things. So I do try to start in a simpler place and build, because it's easy to get overwhelmed if you start thinking, I don't know anything about somebody with a mental disorder. I've never had a mental disorder. And like, this seems so daunting and I want to get it right. And it's like, okay, well, let's back away from that. Mm-hmm. Let's just say she is a woman who, when she is met with something that she can't deal with, I don't know, this is a poor example, but let's say she screams. You know how to scream. Yeah. You've dealt with things that, you've had to deal with things that you feel inadequate to deal with, and you sort of lose it. You've been sad. Mm-hmm. So it's like you take it down to the lowest common denominator that you can relate to, mm-hmm. as opposed to thinking of it as something like that you're... Even when I was playing... That's beyond you. A lot of people will ask me, I mean, I'm a mom now, but a lot of people would ask, like, how do you play a mom when you're not a mom? Yeah. And I'm like, well, what's a mom? Have you ever been nurturing to someone? Probably. A pet, a dog, like whatever. We understand what being nurturing is, right? To a certain extent. For the most part, we have at some point nurtured someone else. Mm-hmm. Have you felt, I don't know, overwhelmed by a daily routine that, or you feel like you're doing a lot for someone and maybe they don't appreciate mm-hmm. it? Of course, yes, it is something for a child to actually emerge from your body, but all the other things that make up being a mom, the overreaching, the things that are more prevalent, is birth is like one little small thing. Mm-hmm. So you know how to access all the other stuff, mm-hmm. even if you've never given birth. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I try to sort of think about what is it about this character that I already know and can relate to, because I do think that all of our characters that we play are just versions of ourselves. Mm-hmm. And, some more extreme versions than others, but ultimately, some actors get accused of that, like, oh, they just play themselves and everything. And I'm like, yeah, that's kind of what we all do. Mm-hmm. And maybe they just haven't gotten a chance yet to do the extreme parts of themselves. But the truth is, most of the time, for most of our careers, we're all kind of playing somewhere in the middle. Mm-hmm. And every once in a while, you get to do a Rosemary. But, like, sometimes you don't. And you end up just playing a version of yourself.
Yeah.
You know?
And you're making me think about something, but just tell me if this is not true. Even if you do research and you got this information down cold and you know it better than an expert, mm-hmm. even, or you consider yourself an expert, or you fooled an expert. They think you're an expert too, and you're
right.
That weighs less than it connecting to you. You have to find something that you connect to for it to work in an acting
Absolutely.
way.
And I think, and that's why I say, like, in terms of the research, do all the research and get all the sort of scientific information, but at the end of the day, you have to be able to relate to that character in a real way, something that you can access, that you can actually put your finger on, which is just how do you deal with things, mm-hmm. you yourself, because it's very hard to describe to people that acting is not, that people can tell when you're sort of faking it. or putting it on. And the best performances do come from when we admit that we are not that different from whoever we're playing. You find that part of you, and it's actually a relief. Being an actor, I tell my husband this all the time, that I get a lot of my therapy sessions from acting because I get to, there's sometimes I want to kill somebody. I feel like I want to be very angry. And, you can't. In life, you don't get the chance to sort of lash out at people. Or you want to cry all day, or you want to have a tantrum. What's really wonderful about being an actor is sometimes you get to do that, do all those things as a character. And that's why it's delicious, because we don't get to play all the parts of ourselves in real life. And an actor does. But I do think it is all a part of us. Everything, if you're playing a murderer, of course you never murder. How do you do that? People say, how do you play a mom if you've never been a mom? Well, you've played a murderer and you've never killed anyone, and you did it really well. So what is that? What is, and what led that person to whatever, murdering, killing? There is something in you that knows what that is, whether you want to admit it or not. There is that evil in all of us. In the same way there is kindness and...
Or even the mother is in all of us.
Of course, Of course.
I mean, that's really freeing for people to hear that, I think, because I think that there will be a bunch of mothers who are actors who wouldn't say that. Because you hear this a lot. You hear you can imagine what it's like to be a murderer, but you cannot imagine what it's like to be a mother. I'm sorry. When you said it, it was yes, it's so freeing to hear something positive like that. To be you can.
Of course.
You can do it. You can. This is not, because I really do believe that. And also in a mystical way too, that it's all of it is in us.
Of course.
I really do believe that.
And we've all mothered at some point.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I have small children and they've mothered. I see them taking care of their friends. Yeah. I see my youngest taking care of her big sister when her big sister's crying. I see her doing motherly things. We learn from whoever we're around. And so I do think, it exists in all. I think, saying, oh, you could never imagine being a mother, I think it's because we want to believe we're somehow special. It's not really. We all have it in us in one way or another. If you break it down really just to the essence of what that thing is, what is a mother? What is the president of the United States? Yeah. Or what is that job? Or what is that position? You will find that you can relate to it in one way or another. Yes. Yes. And have done similar things in your life. And it's really, I don't know that I'm being extremely profound, but I do think that that's what acting is. Acting is breaking it down to sort of the lowest common denominator that we can all relate to.
So the story goes that you've told many times. You're in pre-med.
Yes.
You get cast in a play. They were looking for black people. They were looking for black people. Actors.
For Blacktown.
Blacktown.
Yeah.
They had plenty for Whitetown.
There was so many. Whitetown was inundated.
But what I want to talk about is, yes, you may have enjoyed yourself.
Right.
Okay? But you're in pre-med.
Right.
For you to be I want to do this with my life.
Yeah, I know.
It couldn't have necessarily happened right then, although you want to believe that. That's the story they're going to tell legendarily about you, that it was in that moment on the stage where you gave up your dreams of
my one
doctorhood.
line in Blues for Mr. Charlie. I literally had one line, and every once in a while I'd mess it up.
Yeah.
No. It is that thing of... People do want to believe that you have some kind of epiphany and you realize you get the bug. People always say, and that's when
Yeah.
you got the bug. And I'm like, I don't remember it happening like that.
Yeah.
I do remember that there came a point in my career or in my college life where I was spending a lot more time in the theater than doing anything else. Mm-hmm. And it was more a decision of it was just like more of a logical thing. I'm spending all my time here. I'm not really getting any other work done. Maybe this should be the work so I can actually get graded for this thing that I'm spending all my time doing. But I do remember being on stage and thinking, maybe not in that first play, the second play I did a new play festival. And I don't know why, but I'm very competitive, and I was determined to learn everyone's lines and everyone's part.
Wow.
And I did it.
Wow.
And it was out of necessity to a certain extent, but also because I was a bit of a lunatic, still am a little bit, and I thought it would be cool to learn all the parts. So what happened is we had this new play. We lost, I think, over maybe 2 weeks. We kept losing people. So one girl got mono, and she had to quit, and she was like the best actress at school. I remember Carolyn Roberts. And at that point, I was like, I know all Carolyn's lines. Like, I know, I learned everyone's lines. I don't know. I was like, I know all of Carolyn's lines. And then somebody else, I feel like we shuffled around again because someone else ended up leaving. And then I took that part because I also knew that part. And then it kind of was just like, and then I had a friend who was doing it because she's still a really good friend of mine. She was doing the play because she wanted class credit and she wanted to do something fun, but she could never learn her lines. So literally on stage, because I knew everyone's lines and everyone knew this, she would look at me with panic in her eyes and I would just be like, and whisper her line to her. So I got the reputation of just being very quick more than anything else. Like I could be depended on in a situation where somebody had to be replaced. And that was like, that's not a bad reputation to have either. But I was also a good study at it. But I was like that with pre-med. Like I was a good student. So I just carried that over into acting. I was just a good student of acting and actors, and I watched the hell out of people. I watched what everyone did like a crazy person. And I was a really quick study.
So you would have been good whatever you did.
I mean, to be obnoxious, probably. I was a very good student. So I'd been good. I was good at math. I was good at English. And then I started acting and I was good at acting. You know what I mean? I was just like, but it was because I was very competitive. And in my mind, everything was like also very intense. And I see it in my 9-year-old, which kind of makes me nervous. But I wanted to get things right. And I have been called too dutiful as an actor. I have had to like sort of ease off of that because
and why
sometimes
is that a bad trait?
Just because you put all this pressure on yourself, and especially in the theater, it's a little bit more okay, and don't kill me, theater actors. But I think in film, you don't want to see all the work that's being put into something. You kind of want it to seem effortless. That's like Robert Downey Jr. He's very good at making it, everything he does very effortless. No one wants to see you putting in all the work because the camera picks everything up so quickly and easily and precisely. And so I've had to sort of get all the information, be intense, and then figure out how to back off of it.
You were in the park in 2002?
I was, yeah.
And were you on the stage or were you understudy?
I was an understudy, but I was also on the stage.
Because I was there.
12th Night?
Oh yeah, I saw it.
Yeah, Julia Stiles played violin.
That's right.
I was her understudy. But I also was one of the ladies in waiting. So I was actually on the stage a lot. Didn't have a lot of lines, but because I remember, because we were wearing wool corsets. We were corseted in wool outfits in the middle of the summer. And they were like, "Oh, it's summer wool." Summer wool? The hell is summer wool? You know what summer wool is? It's wool.
It's an oxymoron. Yeah, that's
like, can we just use cotton? They literally put us in wool. And there were days where we would just, and thank God for Kristen Johnston. Because remember she played Mariah, and because she just was like older and brassier, she would just be like, "Today we are going out in just our corsets," and we would take the clothes off and we would perform. We were dying.
I think I was there for that one.
You probably were. We did it more than once, but yeah, there were days we were just like, "There's no way, we're going to die." Yeah. And so we would just go out and the audience loved it. We'd just go out in our petticoats and our corsets.
Yeah.
And that was enough. That was hot enough.
Yeah.
Summer wool.
Was that one of your first plays in New York?
Yeah. Again, it was one of those things where, I tell young actors all the time, there is something to just following through and old school letter writing. I had worked with this director in grad school for my last year. He had come, he was like the big project, professional New York director coming to do a play with the seniors. And when I got out of school, I saw that he was doing 12th Night in the Park. And I just wrote him a note. Wow. And said, "Hey, I'm in New York. I just graduated. I would love to," and I think I offered myself as an understudy. I was like, "I'll even understudy, whatever. I just want to work." And at that time, I was understudying on Broadway, because in a similar way, I'd gone to an open call after graduating. I'd gone to an equity open call for the Crucible on Broadway, and went all the way through the callback. And after my callback, I wrote a note to Daniel Slee saying, "Thanks for seeing me, calling me back. It was great to meet you." I'm all about writing the notes. Yeah. And then he called me in to meet with Richard Eyre. And I was like, I went from grad school to Broadway in a few months. Yeah. And so I was doing the Crucible, but I was not on stage in the Crucible. I was understudying. I wrote Ryan Kulick, "Hey, I see you're doing 12th Night. I would love to come audition if you're having auditions." And the public is a hard place to audition. They see who they know. And I remember friends of mine who had been in New York forever being like, "How the hell did you score an audition with the public? Like, I can't get in there." And I was like, "I wrote Ryan a letter." They were like, "What?" Like, yeah. And this, you didn't drop off a headshot? I was like, "No, I wrote him a letter."
This is the day when a letter wasn't that insane as it is now.
No.
But it was still kind of insane.
I still write letters. Yeah. But yeah, it wasn't, yeah.
Yeah. Do you still write actual letters?
I do. I write thank you notes and
That's big. That, I think, is actually not insane anymore. If somebody got a letter, like a director, they'd be like, who is this person?
I mean, when I say a letter, what did I send him? I think it was in the form, I think there was...
Well, it wasn't a telegram, and it probably wasn't an email.
I mean, no, it was a letter. I think it really was a letter, and maybe I put, because I wanted to show him that I was a professional actor now, I think I put my page from the program for the Crucible in there, and was just like, "Hey, this is what I'm doing now." I circled it. But I had done a play with him. I wasn't someone out of the blue. I had done a play with him in at La Jolla, and I was like his lead. So it wasn't just, I wasn't just someone who he wouldn't remember. I was pretty sure he would remember me. We had a great time. We did Faust, and I played Mephistopheles, and I still want to do that again because I had so much fun doing it. It was so, again, being evil, being naughty. It was so much fun to be that. I'd never really done it before. But I knew I had it in me. I was like so naughty. And I had a delightful time with Ryan. So there was a part of me that knew, I don't think he'd forget me, but you never know. So I sent him the little program with my photo and circled my face and my bio. And yeah, next thing I knew, he called me, or they called me, asked me if I wanted to come read for Viola. And I did. And I remember at the time, Brian called me to tell me that, you know, they had cast Julia Stiles as Viola, but he really wanted me to be her understudy. And I was like, hell yeah.
Yeah.
Like, of course. I've never been afraid of hard work, and I just was determined. I have been a very determined kid my whole life. Very determined person.
I think that somehow matters. Like it somehow shows on you that you're a hard worker, and people want hard workers around.
Yeah.
I think they want to hire a hard worker.
Yeah. Even if you're not like super talented. I tell people that all the time too. Because here's the thing, like you will learn if you're around something enough and you have any kind of intelligence or observational skills, you'll learn eventually how to be better.
Yeah.
You will improve. You just kind of have to be in the room with the people who are good. My best teachers are people I've watched in rehearsal who don't even know they're teaching me. I just watch them. I watch the hell out of them.
Yeah.
You know, those are my best acting classes.
Yeah.
Was rehearsal.
And what about like Pacino? Were you watching him all the time?
Oh my God. Lily and I religiously, we watched Pacino so hard that we would just, I mean, he's phenomenal, but also mystical, to use your word. We could never really figure out what was going on. But again, you're in the room with Al Pacino. Like, how dumb would I to be in the room with Al Pacino and like be on my cell phone or whatever? You know what I mean? When I see people do that in rehearsals, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? Get off your phone. Like, this is a master. This is a master class. You can pay $1 gazillion for this, or you could get off your goddamn phone and listen to, or watch him work, or see that his process is not dissimilar to yours. I mean, what was beautiful about Al, and I've told this story before, so forgive me, but so I get this right. I'm replacing a woman who did Merchant of Venice in the Park, right? And I'm replacing her. And part of the deal, honestly, I think I just fit into her clothes. I was a very similar size as she is. But at that point, I'd done, whatchamacallit, 12th Night in 2002 or 3 or whatever it was. And now this is 2010. I just given birth, and I was immediately, that drive, that ambition, I immediately was like, get me out of here. I need to go to work. Literally, the baby had just come out. And I was texting my agents, calling my agents, like, what's going on? What's going on? Is there a workshop? Can I get into something? Just give me something. And they called about replacing this woman. And I didn't know. Merchant of Venice was not one of the plays I knew very well. And I was, Shakespeare it's not easy. People like to pretend like they know Shakespeare. I think there's still so much to unpack. Anytime I do a Shakespeare play, it's always great, but I'm always like, oh my God, I have no idea what the hell I'm doing. This is so hard. And then you kind of figure it out. There's usually like a aha moment, and then you're like, oh, okay, I got this now. But I have to say, whatever the speech is or the scene, I have to do it like 15 times to understand what the hell I'm talking about. So, because I found out about the audition, let's say Friday, and I had an audition Monday, and now I had a little baby, I was like, I cannot read Merchant of Venice and figure it out in 3 days, because I know it takes me 15 tries to figure it out. So I got No Fear Shakespeare. Now, sort of embarrassingly got No Fear Shakespeare. I'd never admitted it to anyone, except now I admit it all the time. Because, so I do that.
I love No Fear Shakespeare. I'm sorry. I love it. Because you have it on the other side. You have it on the other side.
Exactly.
If you didn't have it on the other side, you'd be embarrassed.
It's just like, if it is another language. It is not English how we know it now. It is another language. It's like if I had to do a Spanish play, I would need an English translation, and that would help me understand what the hell I'm saying in Spanish. That's it. So, but I did have, a little bit of embarrassment about having to use the No Fear Shakespeare. I read The No Fear so I could remind myself what the heck Merchant of Venice was about and what the part was about. And then I read the actual Shakespearean version after I read, like you said, I was kind of reading them both at the same time so I could go into my audition and just know, and people can tell with Shakespeare. They can tell if you know what the hell you're talking about or if you're just saying words.
That's right.
And I am like so crazy about that. When I see plays now, I'm always like, oh my God, this person has no idea what they're saying because I have no idea what they're saying. And I should just understand. If they were speaking as though they had an understanding, I would understand also.
It's
and I
beautiful when
know
that
Shakespeare.
happens.
It's so wonderful when you find an accessible Shakespeare. So, and I've been lucky enough to be in a couple of productions. I feel like our Othello was like that. It was just accessible. And I'm all about accessibility. So anyway, I go in the room and it's Daniel Sullivan. And what I love about Daniel is he's not precious about it. He's just like, oh, we don't know what that line means. That line is a very archaic line. It's an archaic reference. Just take it out. No one's going to understand that. It's like a lot of the jokes, poor Chris Fitzgerald had to do all these jokes because he was, the Joker. And he had so many lines where we were like, you're the funniest person we know. You're trying really hard. But no one understands the joke. We have to take it out. We cut so much stuff. And it's like, I love directors who can do that. Like, take it out. No, if no one understands, why be precious? I don't think Shakespeare was precious with his shit. Take that out. Take it out. So anyway, to go back to the No Fear, I go into rehearsal and I'm like, I can't believe I got this job, first of all. I just had a kid and now I'm on Broadway with Al Pacino. And Al Pacino walks in and in his hand is like the most dog-eared No Fear Shakespeare of The Merchant of Venice. And this was like his third time doing it. Because he had done it on Broadway or he had done the play and he had done the film. And now he's on Broadway and he still has the No Fear Shakespeare in his hand.
What did that do to you?
Oh my God. I was like, I wanted to like get up and just simultaneously, I wanted to be like, everybody's a fraud. But I also wanted to be like, yes, just like me. It was one of those things where your expectation is like, oh my God, I'm in this room. It's the imposter syndrome that people talk about now. Like, what the fuck am I doing here? They're going to realize I don't know what the hell that I read No Fear Shakespeare to get this far. And then Al walks in and he shuffles in and he's like this little short old dude. I think he was putting on because I saw him later on not pretend to be that old. And I was like, oh, you were just being Shylock when you walked in the room that day. First year rehearsal. And he literally is carrying the No Fear Shakespeare. And I was just like, oh my God.
And the amazing thing about that is he had just done it in the park.
That's what I'm saying. He had done it in the park. He had done it, I think, in his life, in his previous life. He had done the film. And
that's
he's
right.
Still
the
bringing
film.
it.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So that to me was just like, none of us really know what we're doing. Thank God.
Yeah.
And now I can like relax and freaking get to work.
Before we leave talking about theater, I want you to talk about August Wilson because Joe Turner's come and gone, right? But tell me, if you could, your first discovery of him, and then tell me the story of getting that and doing that, if you could.
So, ironically, and this is how my life has worked out, my thesis at Dartmouth was about Joe Turner's coming on.
Oh, wow.
That was my first exposure to August Wilson, was reading it, and not in my theater class. It was in my English class in college. And I was blown away. First of all, I was like, how do I not know this? How did I get through high school and not know August Wilson? That's preposterous. It's American history. It's incredible, beautiful. But what they teach you in school, when they teach you about Black playwrights, you get Lorraine Hansberry. If you're lucky, if they teach you about Black playwrights, and maybe you get into Zaki Shange, but like, I didn't know August Wilson. So I'm reading this stuff. I'm like, oh my God, these women are incredible, three-dimensional women, and these stories, and it's about Black families, and it's historical, and it's emotional, and it's funny, and it's all of these beautiful things, and it's Shakespearean, quite frankly, the way he writes, because the thing about August Wilson is there is a rhythm to every, because he will have a character go on for pages. I mean, this dude will write, like you have, when you're doing a Wilson character or a lead character, it's a lot of words in the same way Shakespeare is. So it's Shakespearean in its robustness and its verbosity. Verboseness, I don't even know. Whatever that word is. Verbosity. And so you have to have like a real a voice, a vocal quality for it, and a vocal strength for it. And because I've been told since I was 12 years old that I sounded like my brothers, I was like, I think this might be right for me, like this kind of thing, in the same way I felt like Shakespeare was right for me. You know, when I first was exposed to Shakespeare in undergrad again, I remember we were at RADA. I'd gone away with my theater program to RADA, and we were doing Shakespeare with some of the RADA teachers. And I remember thinking, oh, I actually can do this. Like this kind of sort of rigorous verbiage is, I feel like it's familiar to me for whatever reason. So yeah, when I read Wilson in school, and I can't remember if we ever saw footage. Maybe we saw footage of one of the earlier plays that they had done on Broadway in the class. But I just thought he was brilliant. And so, again, when this chance came up, I had done, at that point, I had done The Crucible on Broadway with Lincoln Center. And I wrote a letter to Daniel Swee saying, hey, I'd love to audition for this thing. And I did. But it felt right to me at the time. It's hard to describe, but I just felt like I'm supposed to do this. Like I dug so deep into it for my thesis, into Joe Turner's Come and Gone. I read so much about it and felt like such a part of it that when I saw that they were doing it on Broadway, I felt like I think this is where I've been headed this whole time in a weird way. I found my purpose. Like I said, I'm very intense sometimes.
When they see us.
Yes.
I want to talk about this centered around just one line, because it's the line that first killed me, and then, of course, Jarrell Jerome destroyed me.
I know.
But you killed me first.
Oh boy.
Okay.
What was the line?
I love you enough to make up for everybody.
Yeah, she said that.
And I just want people to just maybe write those words down and just look at them, because the way you do it, we spent a lot of time talking about you don't have to be a mother, but I'm sorry. If you weren't a mother, I don't think you would have killed me with that. In the way you did,
though.
You know.
I don't know.
Okay, I want you to be right. I want you to be right that you don't have to be a mother to do that. But
what if you're a big sister?
I know, but
what if you've taken care of your siblings your whole life? What if you've...
I got you. Wait, instead of talking about it like that, something in that moment, you were pulling from somewhere.
Well, I'll tell you exactly what I was pulling from.
Yeah.
And here's the thing. We don't always know. So I'll say that. Actors, a lot of time when I talk about process, I listen back and I go, is that really true? Because in the moment, you can't be thinking about all those things. Otherwise, it doesn't ring truthful. And so the discussion of process is itself a little bit of a misnomer, a misdirection. Because the truth is, the process is almost no process. You have to so just to backtrack a little, someone asked me, a friend of mine, another actress asked me recently, she said, I have to cry in an audition, and I usually am fine, but the other day I had a real hard time, and now I have a callback, and I'm worried that I won't be able to cry, so what do you do? And I told her, I said, I wish I could be more helpful, but the truth is, I just cry because in the moment, I want to cry. And I can't tell you why I can cry. I don't think I'm faking it. I get really upset. I give myself headaches on set all the time because I'm really crying. I'm not faking it. But I said, but if you're, say, having a day where you just can't do it, just ask for tears. They'll give you, when you're on set. She said she wasn't going to the callback, she had to go shoot it. And I said, oh my God, if you can't cry in the scene, you know how many actors that I think are, oh my God, they're brilliant actors, and I watch them, and then I go on set with them and I see them ask for tears, and I'm like, what? They asked for tears this whole time, I thought. So if you can fake it, good on you, but I have never been good at faking it.
Yeah.
So, back to Linda McCrae. Linda McCrae actually said those words. I don't know if she had said them to Ava before, but on the phone with me and Ava and Michael, she was recounting going into the prison. It's gonna make me cry. To see her child, her only child. And that he was talking about,
they're gonna hate me or something like
just the hatred that people were slinging at him on a daily basis because they thought he was a rapist. And I had almost killed a woman and an animal. And she said, she just had to tell him, it doesn't matter what any of those people say. And it doesn't matter that they don't love you, because I have enough love in me to make up for all of those people. And she meant it. And when she said it, she meant it. And I know that when I said it as her, I had to mean it. And I remember her saying it. I can hear her actually saying it right now in my head. And it wasn't, for her, it wasn't cliche. It wasn't anything that she had to think about.
And I think that's why, I'm sorry to interrupt, but that you just hit on it right there. Like it could be a cliche. Someone could read that line and just be like, oh, this is like a nice line. Even in that moment, it's there's a lot of, even in this movie, that is so authentically powerful, but still an actor could think like, well, this line is just like, it's a nice thing to say to somebody in the moment, like that you would say, I love you today more than yesterday, but not as much as tomorrow.
Right.
It can be done in that kind of way.
Right.
And I'm not saying that another actor would have done it like that and you didn't, so you're a better actor. I'm just saying, like, for you to take this and for me to hear that, and I'm feeling it now. I mean, like, so I'm wonderful to hear that you heard it directly from her. It's like,
I heard it from her, but I also had a director who remembers it also and reminded me. Like, I remember that scene because sometimes what would happen to me on the set of When They See Us is things would get so incredibly sad that it was hard for me to separate how I felt about it from what the woman feels, what Linda felt about it. Now, how I feel about it is, oh my God, how horrible that this woman had to deal with this. And then it would almost shut me down because I just wanted to cry for her. But she herself, in the moment, isn't crying. So there were so many times where I'd say to Ava, oh my God, I don't want to cry. I feel like I'm crying through every scene, but there's no way. This woman that I spoke to, she definitely cried on the phone a couple of times, but she was not a crier. She was a strong person. She was strong. She was determined. She was a force. And that's not to say you can't be all of that and be a crybaby, but I definitely wanted to honor that about her. So I would try to step outside of myself and think, okay, this isn't about how you feel, Marsha Stephanie. This is about how Miss Linda felt. And you can't be defeated in the moment. And that's what I feel like Ava was, when we started doing the scene, I was doing it as though I had already given up. And I feel like Ava came over and reminded me, like, no, you remember what she said, which was, even when she said, which I was hoping we would get in the movie somehow, but we didn't. But she said this beautiful thing about, she would put on this face, talk about acting, right? She would put on this face of strength and like purpose and knowledge and courage in front of her son. And she would do it the whole visit. And then she said she would walk outside and literally like right outside the door, just outside, out of sight of him, she would fall apart. But she would never let him see her fall apart. And that's what I kind of was holding on to, was the idea of it makes me so sad. And I want to fall apart. But remember, this is the woman who said she never fell apart in front of him, because she felt that if he saw, with everything he was dealing with, if he saw that she was weak, he would not be able to survive. And she had to keep his survival at the expense of her own, in a weird way. She had to keep his survival at the forefront of her mind. And he could never know what she was really going through, because if she felt like it would destroy him in there. And I thought that's such a sacrifice. That's so intense. And I wanted to honor that. And thank God Ava was there to remind me, like, this is what we're honoring. We're honoring someone who doesn't let him see her fall apart. You know?
That's such a great little tidbit about Ava as a director.
She's fantastic.
Tell me more about her. It's like you hear other people talking, and it's just like she's so present with the actors, it seems like.
You know, I don't know if, I've never been on another Ava project, so I don't know if she's like this all the time. I do know that I think she really, because she knew these guys and they had trusted her with their story, I think she felt very responsible to get it right. And she's like, you know, she's probably the same age or a little younger than some of them, but she has a maternal sort of nurturing affection for them and for their story and for their families, and a care for the story. And so she was very emotionally invested in it, or she appeared to be, just because we would do scenes, and as like you said, we would do that scene and then she'd come over to give notes and she'd been crying, you know, but that was a lot of our crew. We were a very emotional set. And it was because we were telling the story of real people and something that was so devastating. And we'd stop after a take and just weep, knowing that we'd have to do another take and go back to one. But we would just take the time and just like let ourselves be emotional about what these people had gone through. I mean, I remember Michael one time just, it's a scene, it's a very quick scene, but it's when Antron's dad, Bobby, comes back after he's been sick. And I'm on top of the stairs. Linda's at the top of the steps, and she sees him in the courtyard, and he's walking towards her, and she sees how sick he is. And she's just like devastated. But again, can't really let him know how devastated she is to see him like that. And I remember after we shot that scene very sort of quickly, you know, Ava wanted to get it while we were feeling the emotions, all of us. And after that scene, Michael kind of fell apart because he was just like, that this family, this beautiful little tiny family, was destroyed. And that the enormity of that, and I think he similarly isn't faking anything. So when we play it, we really play it. And then it's devastating for everybody around. But yeah, that was a moment where Michael fell apart. Ava had to come over and like give hugs and sort of be our therapist for a few minutes. She was good at that. She's good at that. But she also knew what she was dealing with. She knew that the story was that kind of story, that this isn't all right, cut, move on to the next. It wasn't that kind of set. It was definitely a set where we had to really give people time. Give people time. The crew, we had a first set I'd ever been on where they offered everybody therapy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone, crew, everybody. They sent out a note. If you're having a hard time dealing with the subject matter, we understand, and we're here to help you guys, and let us know if you need to see somebody to talk about what's going on.
Would you be doing plays exclusively if you had everything you needed, you know, financially, you had every award possible? I don't know what people think about, like, you've done all the roles on film and TV you wanted to. Would you just spend the rest of your life
Doing
in the theater?
plays?
Is that the ultimate for you? And the reason why you're not there all the time is because you got
money. Money.
And your family, and
You know, so I went to see Soldiers Play last night, the opening.
Yeah.
Went to see that last night, loved it. And I called my husband afterward, and he said, because I haven't done a play in years, and he said, did it make you want to go like tread the boards again? Did it make you want to go back to theater? And I thought, every time I see a play, I do feel like, oh God, I love theater so much. Does it not right now. The theater schedule for me right now with two small children is too time consuming. So the difference is, yes, I'll go do a film and I might have long days, but it'll be for a shorter period of time. So I just shot something and I was away for a couple of months, but it was just a couple of months. And they came to see me and it was fine. But sometimes you do plays and you're gone. If you have rehearsal and previews, and some plays stay in previews for months. If you have rehearsal and previews, you could never see your kids. Because if they wake up, they go to school, and then you're in rehearsal while they're in school, and then you're not coming home till they're in bed. So maybe you'll see them for 5 minutes in the morning if you're lucky when they're off to school. But you know what I mean? Like, that schedule is it's a lot to do for. My friend just did Mockingbird on Broadway for a year. I don't feel like I could ever do that. It's too much time. And besides that, it's just not enough money for the amount of time you're spending. So I can do shorter projects for more money for now. Now, do I love theater? Absolutely. Do I think theater is the ultimate? Because what I was lucky enough to get with a miniseries, and sometimes what you get with film, is that you get a little bit of the theater life, which is that you have more time to develop a character with a bunch of people who are doing the same thing you're doing. You just get more time to live in that world. And my friendships that have lasted have been my theater friendships, if that makes sense. You do a TV show, you're friendly with people, but unless you're doing a show for years and years and years, those are probably not going to be your best friends. And even sometimes if you're doing a show for years and years and years, it's so disjointed and you're shooting scenes at a time and you're not even with most of your cast members, even though you're on the same show. And it's so disjointed that there isn't that cohesion that happens in a rehearsal room where you're all in it together for hours and hours.
Yeah.
And then you're all on stage and you are feeling an audience. So one night you have a bad audience or, a bad show because you felt like the audience wasn't with you but you're experiencing that together. Even if you're not on stage together, you're experiencing it together because you're all in that one room together or on that one stage together. And then one day you have a great audience and you all feel that together and you go out after the show. There's a whole culture with theater that is better for relationship building, feeling like a family, cohesion, which I do love. And I love, like most of the people I've been on stage with, even people who maybe at the time, this is weird, but even people who at the time maybe I didn't love, for whatever reason, they were annoying, we didn't get along, we annoyed, usually it's some minor annoyance because, you've been around somebody so long and they just become annoying. But now when I run into people I've done theater with, it's like, it's like running into your cousin or like your long lost, really good friend. Because you just have like this thing, there's this experience that you can't, it's hard to recreate with film and TV.
So, though, are you able to get what you need artistically from the other endeavors, film and television? Is that feeding your art enough?
It depends. And I have, this is hard for me to really answer because I've never had the chance to be on a show consistently. Like I've never done multiple seasons of any show. And I do think if you are able to do that and able to really develop a character over time with whoever the creators are, and I have friends who have been able to do that, and I know that feels like theater to them. I have never been able to do that. What I will say is film for me is a little bit of that, of feeling like I just have more time to find what this thing is and to live in this world. And so a few films I've done, and honestly, in a similar way, I've stayed friends with the people I've done films with. We spend more time together than you do on a TV show. Now, I will say shooting How to Get Away with Murder with Viola is one of those unique experiences where you get to be in a room with someone who's just a master at it. So even though I have just scenes with her for a few episodes, I do feel like I am being fed artistically because I'm just learning a lot from being in her presence. Honestly, I learn a lot from sitting next to her in the hair and makeup trailer. The woman is a fountain of knowledge and experience. And because she's, I actually played her daughter in a film a while back. So we have a little bit of a history, but also, again, going back to the beginning of the interview, I learn a lot by watching other people. And so we shot something recently where she always starts out by apologizing. I'm sorry, Marsha, Stephanie, I don't know any of my lines. And I'm like, no kidding, you're in every scene. Like, I would be embarrassed if I didn't know my lines, but you should not feel any embarrassment or be apologizing because you literally are, are responsible for this entire script. And then we had a scene where we kept doing it over and over again. And she, I don't know, at some point she turned to me and she was, again, trying to apologize for like not feeling like she was getting it right or something. I don't even know. I was like, Viola, to me, you literally could never get this wrong. I quite frankly, I said selfishly, I know you want to go home. I think we were shooting something right before the holidays. And I was like, I know you want to go home, but selfishly, I could sit here for 14 hours and watch you get this wrong.
Yeah,
like in quotation, like
I'd want to watch that on TV.
Exactly.
Her getting it wrong.
Exactly.
And rather than somebody getting it right.
You're apologizing to me, and in the meantime, I'm enjoying this masterclass that is watching you supposedly get it wrong. Because so far, I haven't seen you get anything wrong.
Yeah, right.
And I am just like amazed that I'm even in this same space with you. Like. You can learn from anything.
Yeah.
You can learn from anyone, but definitely Viola Davis is sitting across from you.
Yeah.
Pay attention to every take.
So it sounds like being with the right people is feeding, not only the right material. Yeah. It's like and sometimes when they both happen, that's got to be something special too.
Yeah, when they both come together. And when they see us, the best example was great casting of great people, great personalities, with a great director. And then our producer was lovely. The producers who were on set a lot, Barry Welsh, just a really nice energy. I run into him now and I feel like, again, it's like running into family. It's, it's different than my experience usually with a TV show.
Yeah.
But I do think it all started with Ava.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It comes from the top.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Marsha, Stephanie, Blake, thank you.
You're welcome.
I really appreciate this.
Thank you for letting me just go on and on about
my God,
whatever.
That's what this is all about.
Back to One is a production of Filmmaker Magazine, which is a publication of IFP, the Independent Filmmaker Project. Listen to back episodes of this podcast at filmmakermagazine.com or wherever you get your podcasts.